Does the Galileo Movement wax the facts? Part 2. When the moon waxes, it appears to stretch. Wax is also a mouldable substance. What we're asking here is if the Galileo Movement either stretches the facts or uses them like putty. This video is the second part of a response to the Galileo Movement's video titled Axe the Tax. In the first part we looked at their argument for inaction regarding carbon dioxide, which was essentially an argument from small numbers. As futile as that argument may be, upon investigation we found relatively large numbers. So we've already established that they, to at least some extent, wax the facts. Moving on to their next claim, the Galileo Movement says that carbon dioxide is colourless, odourless and non-polluting. But is it? Taking the last point first, the question of whether carbon dioxide is a form of pollution or not comes down to whether it does harm. Global warming and ocean acidification are examples, coral bleaching being an obvious manifestation of these problems. When it comes to global warming, there is a Goldilocks effect. Too little carbon dioxide and the globe is too cold. In the Goldilocks zone, just right. And, of course, too much and it's too hot. Certainly 280 parts per million is in the Goldilocks zone, but at 390 we are moving outside that range. The Galileo movement seemed to be trying to sidetrack the issue by focusing attention onto irrelevant details. Whether something is colourless or odourless is not the main criteria for determining whether something is a form of pollution or not. Next is carbon dioxide colourless. When it comes to carbon dioxide and global warming, the fact that carbon dioxide is colourless in the visible part of the spectrum is part of the problem. The second part of the problem is that it isn't invisible in the infrared band. The diagram shows the sun radiating visible light down through the atmosphere. On the way down, the visible light passes through the atmospheric carbon dioxide unaffected, then striking the Earth and heating it up. The Earth then radiates infrared light, shown in pink, back up. However, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, shown symbolically as the grey band, absorbs and re-emits some of this infrared energy back to the Earth, keeping the Earth warmer than it otherwise would. That is global warming. Focusing on the radiation featured in the previous diagram, we see on the graph two bell curves, one yellow highlighting the visible spectrum of light coming from the sun, and the other pink for the infrared radiation emitted by the Earth. Note how the two curves are separated by frequency. Let's consider the colour of carbon dioxide. If we cast our eyes at the green line, which is the absorption spectrum from carbon dioxide, we can see that the carbon dioxide absorbs three main bands of colour. However, the one on the right is the one of most concern, as it is smack in the middle of the spectrum of the thermal radiation leaving the Earth. Here we see that existing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has blocked part of the infrared window for thermal radiation to escape from the Earth. This is indicated by the strip of white in the pink zone. You'll note that in the infrared spectrum there is a side lobe identified in the diagram by the circle. It is this region of the green curve that, as carbon dioxide levels increase, will further shut down the outgoing thermal radiation window. So increasing the carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere increases global warming. Let's consider global warming and equilibrium. For an increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide, the temperature of the Earth will continue to warm until the balance between the incoming radiation and outgoing radiation is restored. In this diagram, the increase in the infrared radiation emitted by the Earth for a rise in temperature due to atmospheric carbon dioxide is shown in red. For our colour-coded diagram, that means equilibrium is re-established when the yellow radiation entering the atmosphere matches the pink plus the red radiation leaving the atmosphere. The Galileo movement alleges that carbon dioxide is odourless. They certainly must have forgotten to ask any mosquitoes, because technically this invalidates their claim. Furthermore, as the concentration rises, carbon dioxide takes on a sharp acidic odour. You may think that my objection is a bit unreasonable, because mosquitoes were not the context that they were referring to, nor very high concentrations of carbon dioxide. But herein lies the problem. The context is that scientists are concerned about carbon dioxide because of the threat of global warming and ocean acidification, not whether it's colourless or odourless. The argument from the Galileo movement is a red herring. However, the production of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere comes from the burning of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels such as coal burn to produce hydrogen cyanide, sulfur nitrate and other toxins. Probably some of these associated toxins have a pungent odour. So yes, the context is important, and that is what the Galileo movement needs to understand. Finally, we come to Alan Jones, the face of the coal lobby in Australia, and his short rant at the end of their video. Nowhere in the video called Axe the Tax do they give evidence to support his conjecture that the carbon tax is going to bring Australia to its knees. The purpose of the price on carbon pollution is to prevent serious pending problems and disruption to human society, not to mention the destruction of ecosystems in nature. The pollution may have the potential of bringing the world to its knees, not, as we will find, the price we put on it. The main side effect of pricing pollution will be to increase the cost of electricity. The impact is said to increase our power bills by about 10%. Consider a family that currently pays $1,200 a year on power. The tax will then be $120 a year. For the majority of people, $120 is less than 0.2% of their gross family income. And that is without considering the effect of the government's compensation package. All I can say is that Alan has weak knees. In part 1, we found that the Galileo movement was guilty of waxing some of the facts. In this video, meaning part 2, we have seen that the Galileo movement tried to claim that carbon dioxide was not a pollutant. If only coral reefs could talk. The dictionary defines pollution as a harmful or poisonous substance introduced into an environment. Carbon dioxide is certainly a substance which is introduced into the environment, and oversupply has harmful consequences. That should be straightforward enough. But they attempted to use the attributes colourless and odourless to bolster their claim that carbon dioxide is not a pollutant, a red herring if ever there was one. We also found that being colourless in the visible spectrum was part of the problem, and being coloured in the infrared spectrum completed the problem. The problem being that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. Then we looked at the basic science of global warming due to carbon dioxide. Next, we found that the price on carbon will have little impact on families. We noted that the Galileo movement failed to show that the price on carbon would bring the country to its knees. Seems like Alan's rant was just propaganda. Once again, we found that they used the facts like putty and have been waxing the facts. Axe the wax, not the tax.